Okay, hello everybody. Um, for today's lesson, we're going to look at the aims and results of Nazi's policies, but we're going to focus really on the impact of policies on women, all right? So for this video lecture, the focus really will be on women, all right? Now, if you turn to page 4 of your notes, you will see some of the aims the Nazi policies had on women. For example, women to have more children, so they're responsible to bring them up, to take care of them, to take care of the house, to take care of the husband. And really, the Nazis are trying to discourage the women from working in the industry. So, to stop paid employment for women, except for very specialist vocations like midwifery, whereby they deliver children. So, from the period of 1933 to 39, basically this was the propaganda that was promoted among the women. Now, there was a Nazi slogan for this. So, children, kitchen, and church. Really, the focus really is that the woman should take care of the children. The woman's place should be in the kitchen cooking, and the woman need to be a good so-called Christian. Now, Hitler claimed that his task was to renew the traditional role of women as mothers. So you can see how conservative the Nazis were, and to ensure the national future in an age of declining birth rate. So for the Nazis, really, is that if we can increase the population, that will be good for the economy, that will be good for society and for the future. Now, when you think of the Nazi regime, basically they were anti-feministic in nature, and they rejected women liberties. So, for example, abortion was not allowed, and the woman could not have access to contraception, because the idea really is that they want the woman to have more children. Now, they also want to discourage females in the workplace. So basically, the destiny of the woman was to return back to the homes. And as the women return back to the homes, interestingly, they also begin to provide jobs or more jobs for the unemployed males. And Hitler rejected ideas of gender equality. So he described the push for women's rights and equal pay for women as a communist plot. So you can remember, if you think about the ideology of communism, communism promotes equality. That means women are also equal to men in some sense, but Hitler rejects all this. You can see how conservative his view was. Now, so as we think about all these aims, then we're going to look at basically all the policies that the Nazis would have to try to achieve these aims. And there are 5 areas here, and we're going to look at all these 5 areas, all right? Now, the first area really is on pro-natalist policies. Basically, policies to try to encourage growth in birth rate, because remember, having more children, right? And also, and of course, when you look at these policies, they are pursued through a mixture of incentives and disincentives. Okay, so what are some of the incentives that Hitler did? So, for example, there was a marriage loan scheme. They wanted to encourage couples to get married and have children. So as an incentive, it was introduced in June 1933 as Section 5 of the Law of the Reduction of Employment, and marriage couples could receive a marriage loan of 1,000 Reichsmarks to be repaid at 1% per month, okay, with the amount to be repaid reduced by a quarter for every racially pure child produced. So really it's, again, how to promote birth rate. Of course, there's income tax reduction. There's also allowances given to mothers, better facilities for mothers, hopefully to bring up the child, and even causes to basically help the mother be to bring out basically their children. Hitler also tried to reward the mothers by giving this idea of the mother cross. Okay, so there's a goal for women who have birth to 8 children, silver for 6 children, and bronze for 4 children. Okay, of course, all these children must be of iron blood, okay, pure. And of course, Mother's Days was celebrated on a national scale, okay, with much pomp and propaganda. So really, is to encourage women to become mothers. Of course, there are also disincentives, higher income tax if you are a single woman, okay, and abortion was made illegal except for the Jews. The Jews not illegal because they want the Jews to basically abort their Jewish children. Okay, closing down of birth control centers, limited access to contraceptive devices because they want the women to give birth. And propaganda described abortion as a crime against the body and against the state. So you can see basically they were against the idea of abortion, very conservative basically in their values. Now, if you turn to page 5, you also see interesting policies like this so-called uh, place that was set up, Lebensborn, right, by Himmler and the SS to ensure some kind of Nazi social engineering. So basically, initially, the program provided homes for unmarried mothers of the increasing number of illegitimate children, but yet, basically, these children were racially correct, okay? But later, the institution moved to arrange for the girls to be impregnated by members of the SS in organized brothels. Why the SS? Because if you want to be in the SS, you need to be racially pure. And so, if the SS can impregnate women, then of course the child will be of Aryan descent as well. So that was later what happened to some of these so-called to the institution. So you can see in this photograph, these are some of the women that were part of Lebensborn. Okay, you can see the women okay, on the right side with their children. Okay, basically giving their support towards Hitler with the salute. Now, what were some of the impact of these pro-natalist policies? So we're going to look at marriages and divorce, and we're going to look at basically birth rate and infant mortality, right? And if you look at your notes, you can see basically briefly some of the statistics, but in general, what happened? So did marriage increase? Yes, marriages increase. Did divorces increase? Interestingly, divorces did increase, but when you look at it, basically it increased because some of these marriages who were not productive, they were encouraged to end. So that was one of the reasons why divorce increased. Did birth rate increase? Birth rate did increase. Did infant mortality increase? No, infant mortality dropped. In other words, babies survive, more babies survive. So you can see in some sense, a lot of these women policies did work to encourage birth rate. Now, when you look at the final analysis, then of course the big question really is, did all these policies really lead to the increase in birth rate? If you read the notes, and you read some of the readings out there, it's quite challenging for historians to really determine and assess whether or not it was due, what the increase in birth rate was really due to Nazis' policies. Because there are other factors that could increase birth rate, like social, economic, and psychological factors. Um, for example, some historians argue that the reason why birth rate was increasing is because the depression was slowly coming to the end, and there was improvements in the economy. So people felt more confident that they can have children. So there are other factors involved as well. But of course, let's not take away the fact that maybe these policies really had an impact on society. Then when you think about marriages, was the increase in marriages really due to Hitler's policy? Some historians have argued that the marriage rates would have increased because there was a younger generation of men which had not been killed in World War One and now grew into adulthood. So with more men, then of course, hopefully there'll be more matchmaking and more marriages. But again, the whole idea also is that as the economy improves, marriages could also increase. So there could be other factors. But when you think about it, when the economy improved, we have to give some credit to Hitler's economic policies, in some sense, in helping the economy improve. Now, as we think about this idea of birth rates and marriages, maybe we can think about even our own context. How can we as Singapore solve our low fertility rate? So you can see our fertility rate has been going down since the 1980s as the downward trend. And of course, we need to think about ways to reverse this trend. If not, Singaporeans might become extinct. All right, so something to think about. Now let's move on. Education policies towards women. So you look at page 6 of your notes, right? So some broad ideas. Women teachers encouraged to go home. So basically, if you're a woman and you're in the teaching force, go home and make babies, take care of the house. There were organizations formed to encourage or to propagate this message. So there's the League of Young Girls for girls age 14. There's a League of German Maidens for girls to participate in if you're aged between 14 to 18. In schools, girls had different curriculum in some regards. They studied domestic science and eugenics, obviously, to prepare them for motherhood. And female university students were reduced considerably. So basically, the whole idea is that do not need so many educated women in university. What the women need to do is that they need to be at home, taking care of the husband, the child, okay, and of course, making more babies. So this is a poster, League of German Girls, and basically, remember the Hitler Youth is for the boys, but this basically the focus really is for the ladies. Now, some of the interesting expectations really the whole idea is for girls to be physically fit. So the girls are supposed to pass certain physical tests like run 60 meters in 12 seconds, jump more than 2.5 meters. Wow, that's quite a lot. Throw a ball over a distance of 20 meters, swim 100 meters, complete a 2 hours route march. So really the whole idea, be physically fit so that you can have children. Some photographs whereby you can see the League of Girls with Adolf Hitler. I think this looks like they are on a hike or something. Now, moving on, page 7. So women appearance and dressing. Basically, they are supposed to be very, very conservative in their dressing. So what does that mean? Go back to the traditional German peasant fashion, all right? Some restrictions, for example, we shouldn't be singing in public, dancing in public, appearing bare-legged in public. Okay, so very conservative. And women encouraged to wear dresses and skirts rather than trousers, so you must be feminine. Okay, clothing made of imported or expensive fabrics was condemned as wasteful. And makeup, excessive hairstyles were also discouraged. So, for example, no perms or shortcuts, they were all basically discouraged. Now, you look at this painting, obviously propaganda is very important, by Wolf Willrich, right? Think about 5 ways in which this family down here illustrates the perfect Nazi ideal and, or aligns with the Nazi ideology. All right, so look at this painting. What are some things that you see? Again, you can write your answers in the worksheet. So let me just go through some of the answers. So you can see a few things. Mother caring for baby. Mother wears a plain dress. Mother has her hair in a bun, not wearing makeup. Mother is not skinny, slightly a bit plump, because that is good for having babies. Family living in a rural farming environment. So remember, the ideology really was that the farmers was the purest folk, right? Purest iron, so-called race. The boy wears Hitler Youth uniform. The sister plays the doll, preparing for motherhood. The elder sister has plaited hair and gazes longingly at the baby like as if she wants to be a mother. The family has fair hair, strong bodies, and good complexion. Okay, so the ideal iron so-called race. All right, so really ideology was used to propagate so-called these messages. Now, turn to page 8. What about policies towards women in the workplace? So, married women are not allowed to participate in so-called jobs like medicine, law, and higher ranks of the civil service. Of course, we talk about this marriage loan scheme. So, if the women withdrew from the labor market to get married, they will get this so-called loan. And labor exchanges or these local officers that created to find employment basically they will favor finding employment, obviously, for the men, not the women, all right? Now, when you think about public life and being a jury, so the question is, can women be in the jury? And under Hitler's rule, the answer is no. So Hitler excluded women from the jury service because he claimed, and this can be quite sexist in nature, the women are ruled only by emotion and they can't think logically. So they were not allowed to be part of the jury. Now, what about other public life and organizations? So, in general, women were excluded from the Nazi machinery of the government. But of course, there were some opportunities in various Nazi women organizations, like, for example, the National Socialist Womanhood and the German Women's Enterprise. All right. And of course, there were Nazi groups as well, like the Nazi Women's League and the Work, Faith, and Beauty, which ran classes and emphasized fitness, beauty, and domestic work. So in general, they can't take high positions in the government, but yet they can participate in some of these organizations provided under Nazi so-called control. Now, some of these so-called organizations that go out there to learn stuff, what do you think the women are learning here? All right. So if you can recall, we talk about sculptures, okay, for men, so muscular men, right? For women, you can see this is the ideal woman, slightly a bit plump, because basically very good for motherhood. And again, you can see in this photograph, the women are learning, oh, this is what a woman should look like, okay? So fit, good for being mothers. Now, there were some prominent women in Nazi Germany, so it's not as if women all were sidelined. And if you were talented, of course, you could take up basically possibly quite prominent positions. So, for example, Leni Riefenstahl, the woman on the extreme right, basically she was a high-profile film producer. So you can remember some of the documentaries that we talk about, like The Triumph of the Will, okay, Olympia, right? Basically, she was the director because she had quite a creative so-called talent, right, in this. Hitler recognized this talent. Of course, there was prominent women who really were embracing the Nazi ideology. So, for example, this lady over here, Gertrude Schoid Klink, all right, was head of the Nazi Women Bureau, and she's often nicknamed, right, the female Führer, all right. Now, however, things begin to change during World War II. Okay, so remember, before World War II, women were encouraged not to go to work. But because of World War II and because a lot of the men had to leave their work to fight in the war, basically women's role in the workforce began to increase. So do take note of this, in some sense, this contradiction. So in 39, compulsory labor service introduced for women under 25, okay, to do 1 year's work in agriculture or domestic service, or 2 years work as a nurse or social welfare worker. And by 42, during the middle of the war, women were therefore encouraged to work in factories to help in the total war effort. Okay, January 43, women aged 16 to 45 could be conscripted towards the war effort. So this part now, basically, Nazis were quite desperate. A lot of men were killed, so they needed more so-called labor. And by the last full year of the war, over half the industrial workers in Germany were women. So take note of the contradiction. On one hand, initially, supposed to take care of the home, but due to war effort, the Nazis then used the women in the workforce. Now, so the big question is this: were Nazi policies good or bad for German women? And it also depends on the lens you take. Right? If you are modern and a liberal, then of course, extremely bad. But if you are conservative in your view, you might see actually these policies as somewhat positive. So the bad, right? What is the bad? Feminist historians obviously going to be very critical of Nazi population and family policy, basically, and argue that the status of women has been reduced. All right. Some historians basically feel, for example, Gisela Bloch, she feels that basically this is a form of secondary racism in which women were the victims of sexist racist male regime that reduced women to the status of mere objects under the Nazi rule. So depending on your ideology or view, obviously you will see this as extremely negative. But do take note that at that point in time, there were many women who were conservative in their views. And so, from their point of view, they would have agreed that Hitler's traditional view of the role of the German woman as wife and a mother was good. So they are obviously conservatives, and if you take on the lens of a conservative, then all these policies are somewhat positive. So the non-feminist historians and the historians that try to be slightly more objective, they will argue that actually women's life improved. There were some positive features because there was improved welfare services, made life easier for women, especially if you want to be a mother, you want to have children, you desire that, which, having children is considered a good thing. Okay, and of course, in the rural areas whereby some of the facilities were lacking in the past, now when these facilities were made there, then the rural women benefited in some sense. So it depends really on the lens that you are taking, whether or not you are a feminist or you are a conservative. Okay, now what kind of questions does IB have for this topic? So this is a typical question that you'd like to ask. With reference to one authoritarian state, evaluate the impact of domestic policies on the status of women. So if you can recall, the command term evaluate means to make an appraisal by weighing up the strengths and limitation. So for a balanced essay, really, a balanced essay will highlight the positives and will highlight the negatives, okay, of these policies towards women. Okay, your essay cannot be everything all negative. Even let's say, for example, you maybe having a modern view and you slightly want to protect the rights of women, you must show the positives as well, so that the essay will appear balanced. Okay, so that comes to the end of this lesson on women, and I will see you soon back in school. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye.